Looks like it's 10 o'clock. How's everybody doing today? Good. Good. Huge audience. So glad. I am bringing you the USAJobs to the Forest Service website presentation. Let me ask you guys a hypothetical question. If you were to go out and try and find a Forest Service job, how would you go about doing it?
Go to the forest.
Go to the Forest Service website? USA Jobs. Search jobs with the filter USA or with what? Forest Service? Okay. So would anybody Google jobs, Forest Service? Yeah. All right. Well, oh, this is cute. So either way, whichever way you would have gone, you probably either would have ended up on Google, which would have ended you back up on the U.S. Forest Service's website at a page titled, "Your New Career Starts Here." And this sounds awesome. It's a page filled with a lot of information about how to go about working with the Forest Service, what it's like to work with the Forest Service. The other problem is that this page had no jobs on it. And in fact, there was no job listings anywhere on the Forest Service website, none. So that wasn't very effective for our jobs page. That would have been option A. If you had chosen option B and you had ended up at the USA Jobs website, I don't know if you noticed, but there's only two fields up there. There's your keyword field and your location. The keyword field, you could enter Forest Service. And if you did, you'd get results like this. U.S. Army Corps of Engineers, National Park Service. It was just producing results that would contain forest and service. There was no filter. You couldn't literally filter this down to just USDA Forest Service jobs. So this probably would have been the best way because Forest Service jobs do show up in this list as well, but not just Forest Service jobs. So obviously, this isn't how you get there. This wasn't a good way. The U.S. Forest Service needed a solution that was tailored to them. They got people who were going to their website looking for jobs to see jobs, and it needed to show only those jobs, not everybody else's jobs. My name is Pat Tellia. I'm the Drupal architect for the USDA Forest Service CIO Drupal Enterprise Web Team. It's a mouthful. And whoa, I'm glitching. Oh, well, this is going to be interesting. I can't show you what I'm seeing, but my entire screen is glitching up and down. I can't read my slides, so that's pretty cool. Well, anyhow, this presentation is going to show you the parts and pieces that are needed to put together a solution without any custom code, without any custom modules, to build a display of agency-specific job listings from USA Jobs on your own site. Okay? I can go in depth or I can go kind of lighter. I'm not sure what everybody's looking for in this presentation, but take it as deep as you like it. I'll show all the way down to the field level, and if you guys like that, fine. If you get lost, don't worry. All of everything I'm showing you is going to be on my presentation page, including a link to the GitHub where an entire feature set with all of the code is available for download. All right? PowerPoint isn't responding. Boom. So PowerPoint crashes. That's pretty cool. Give me a minute. Technical difficulties. All right. Before I do get started on this, I do want to thank my team. I was not the person who initially built this. I helped guide the construction of it, but Harris, my head of you right here in the audience, was the architect on the team for systems. Lots of guidance. Maya Barnett, who's not here today, was the developer who basically did everything on the keyboard for the first iteration of this. And then Raj Lala here got the word out that we were doing this, and then basically all of you said, hey, we want to see more. So we refactored this and put it out here as a generic feature so that you guys can download it, take a look at it, and got me out here to speak for it. So some of the questions that we were asked was, why didn't we do X, Y, or Z? I have to say, there's nothing out there that does what we're going to do here. This display, tailored towards whatever agency, with options to filter, search on keywords, everything else, is just not available out there. There were some options like the Views JSON query module, which, if you don't use authenticated headers, could have allowed you to display the results of an API feed as a view without storing it. But we actually wanted the option to be able to store these as nodes so that people could get greater detail if that's what our customer wanted. We didn't end up using that. We just ended up linking straight from that view out to the USAJobs website, but we had the option. The USAJobs module basically just produces a little block of the latest jobs available on USAJobs. It's not, I don't even think you can filter it. We didn't dig too deep into that one because it really would have taken some hacking. The next one, USAJobs integration module, was D8 only, and this is a D7 site. The advanced authentication HTTP fetcher was too difficult to configure, and it still didn't do what we needed either. So we ended up with our tailored solution that does produce, a list of our jobs, only our jobs, updated every day, and linked straight to the job application page for each one of those jobs. You're going to need a few things before you get started. You're going to have to go out to apply for a USAJobs API token. It's a single form. It's very, very quick to fill out, and they get a response back to you really quickly with an API key. Next, you're going to need a tool like a REST client, like Postman or Arc, which allows you to test the connection that you've got with your key and to look at the results, the JSON results that you'll get back. And it's pretty important also to have a site to put it on. You might want to have that. The magic happens on this side of the table. Everything over there is stuff most people already have. CTools, views, field types, taxonomy. The stuff on this side is a little bit more important. The Feeds extensible parser, the HTTP fetcher append headers, that's what allows us to add our authentication key. JSONPath parser is actually what lets us dig into the API results and pull out the parts that we want using an XPath-like syntax. Feeds Tamper allows us to mangle things before we store it in our nodes. Views Bootstrap, because we use a Bootstrap theme and we wanted this to be a responsive table because a lot of the people applying for jobs on the jobs site are on mobile devices. Views selective filters. That one's really cool. So we don't reset our taxonomies every time we do a feed import, and so our jobs titles list gets pretty full, and we don't want to display every one of those. We only want to display the ones that are actually in the results that we're getting. So that's what that filter does. Also, there's 50 states. If we only have 7 jobs, you don't want to have a list of 50 states. You only want the jobs that are for those 7 states. So this reduces that. The last one there is the JSONPath library. You can't actually use the JSONPath parser without it. It's available out on code.google.com at that link. There's also, oh no, I'll get to that in a minute. There's a real interesting gotcha about that. So, the very first thing you're going to have to do after you get all the pieces and parts together is build a content type to store the results. For us, we required these fields. Some of the optional ones for that view selective filter, if you wanted to reduce your results in your view, are those two on the bottom. It's basic stuff, you know, the job grade. We needed a field, though, for each and every thing we were pulling in, not for every field we were displaying, because Feeds Tamper requires this. That's, yeah. Some of these are actually duplicate, and we needed that also for Feeds Tamper. So, when you're done building your content type, you should have something that looks a bit like this. We've got a couple taxonomies, one for states, one for the drop-down for the views, drop-down for position title. The rest is just the fields that everything goes into. Title, job code, high and low range, salary. Nothing too complicated here. All right. So, I'm not sure how familiar everybody is with the Feeds module, but if you don't know it, there's tons of good videos out there teaching you how to set up a feed. It's really pretty simple. You install Feeds UI, and you start going from the top down on the left-hand side under the configuration. Very, very, very simple, actually. But I do encourage you to go watch a video if it seems a little intimidating at first blush. So the order of things to actually figure out how to get from empty feed to completed feed and importing is you need to first go out and use your REST tool to figure out which selectors you need. Then you're going to have to set up the JSON Path parser to grab those items from those selectors. You're going to set up your node mapping to tell it to put those items into particular fields in your nodes. And before it gets there, you're going to alter the data so that it suits you with Feeds Tamper. This URL on the bottom here, which you can basically find just by Googling JSON Path, is the reference for figuring out how to use JSON Path. Like I said before, JSON Path is just like XPath, but with an exception. XPath uses slash notation, JSON Path, like JavaScript, uses dot notation. Oh, and here's the gotcha. When you're setting up your feed, because we have to use Feeds Extensible Parser and Feeds JSON Path Parser, there are two JSON Path parsers. There's the JSON Path parser and the JSON Path parser. I know, it's not confusing at all. Just use the second one. That's the right one to use. And I actually, when I rebuilt it, I didn't realize that. We had built it on the second one live the first time, and I rebuilt it on the first one the second time, and nothing worked. The interface wasn't the same. Certainly didn't produce any results. It just broke. So JSON Path parser. Real important part, you'll get nothing until you put your key in there. That's also another gotcha I had when I was rebuilding it the second time. You'll get the key from USAJobs, and on the third tab on the left, where it says settings for append HTTP headers, you have to put in authentication key and your key. All right? Other than that, you can see the interface is pretty basic. Just on the left-hand side, you start at the top, click on each one, go through its settings, hit save. Next one, settings, save. Next one, settings, save. Repeat. So, because you're using JSON Path Parser, not just going from XML straight to nodes, there's a bit of a flow you have to follow, but it's pretty simple to understand, especially when you get towards the end. The JSON Path Parser has selectors that you're going to be entering. Those selectors are going to be dubbed a machine name that you're then going to use that machine name on the node mapping portion of the setup. And then from the node mapping, it's going to set up that machine name to go against the field name, the field machine name of the content type. So it kind of just goes across like that. I'll show you in just a second what I mean. But just remember, if you see the example names, they're identical. Locations is locations from JSON Path Parser to node mapping. And field USAJobs on the target field machine name and node mapping is the same as the content type field name, 1-to-1. And by the time you get to node mapping, you can't mess it up because it's just drop-downs. Select this drop-down and that drop-down. So, I keep saying find the selectors, and this is what I'm talking about. Let's see if I've got it open here. In your tool, when you test your API feed, you're going to get this blob of data with lots and lots and lots of stuff in it. And you're really going to want to, at first, figure out your context. JSONPath requires that you enter a context that is basically all the header stuff so that it can get that out of the way and get right to the results. And that is going to be search results here, and dot search result items, right here. Every single other thing is within this array. Notice there's 22 items in that array. And they're all the data that you're looking for, the selectors like position title, right here. Everything else is within that. So I'll show you in just a second how JSONPath works, but you need to get this data before you can enter it into JSONPath. Just a note, this is JSONPath parser notation. The beginning, the $, is the root of the path, dot your search result, which I just showed you in the contents, dot search result items, dot asterisk, wildcard, or everything else goes here. Now, after you found your context, you're going to need to find each position element. And that's like position title, job, code, all of that. Every one of them starts with matched object descriptor because every single item in the array starts with match object descriptor. You're just going to need to get each one of those for each one of those fields that you're trying to fill out. In the end, it's going to look like this. Notice on the previous one, we had matched object descriptor dot position title. Well, in Feeds, that's what you're going to add. You're going to call it, what did I call it? I can't see it from here. Position offering type, and that's the machine name that I was mentioning, and that matches up against the JSONPath position offering type dot name. The brackets equal digging into an array, the dots equal going into an object. Now, once you've done that, once you've entered in each of those JSONPath parts, then you can map those to the node field parts. And like I said before, it's really, really, really super simple because it's just a drop-down. Well, I guess that's not going to work. And once you have mapped location to location, position title, you're going to go back in and you're going to click on the little gear, which you can see right here, on each of the taxonomy items, and you're going to tell it to auto-create those taxonomy terms, or else when you do your first import, they'll be empty. So make sure you go in, you click each of those gears and say auto-create. All right. So now you've basically done setting up all of the feed. You've added your key, you've done your JSONPath parsing, mapping, you've done your node mapping. Now it's time to alter the data before you store it into your nodes. That's using Feeds Tamper. You won't even see this link though until you go out and turn on the Feeds Tamper UI. And you'll bang your head against the wall several times before you figure that one out. Because when you turn on Feeds Tamper, it does not turn on the UI. It's sort of like Views has a Views UI, Feeds has a Feeds UI. Turn on the UIs or else you can't get to the stuff. Once you do, you'll get this interface on the right-hand side here, which basically allows you for every bit of data that you're pulling in to change it in one of any number of ways. For us, we implode or we explode arrays out into strings. We implode strings back into arrays. We change. We can search and replace in here. We change full state names down to an abbreviation so that it shows easier in the table. There's just a ton of things you can do with Tamper before it ever gets there. Interestingly, if you notice in your content here, your code, your job code is GS, your job category is 0301. It doesn't display that way on the job site or on our site. It puts like 4 different things together. And so in Feeds Tamper, we do that as well. So let's see. And yeah, there's more that you can do in Feeds Tamper than that, but suffice to say that if there's some way that you need to change your data before you store it, rather than trying to change it as you're displaying it, like through views, do it here in Feeds Tamper. There's a million, string manipulation, removing stuff, making something empty, taking something empty and making it filled up with something. Do it here. It's much easier, and then your data is stored that way, so you don't have to try and change it on Node and in the view. All right, so at this point, you're completely done setting up your feed. You could go to /import at this point, put in this URL, which is the URL that you're going to need for grabbing anything from the USAJobs Search API. Replace your agency code with, or replace this NN10 with your agency code. That's NASA. Like, you can fill your site with anybody's jobs if you want, but you probably want your jobs. So put your agency code there and hit the import button. Once you do, you should be able to go to your content site or to your admin content section and see a whole bunch of new jobs there, if everything went right. If not, go back into Feeds and hit, there's a debug checkbox you can set on every single field to see what broke. But if everything went right, you can go to your /content and you can see each one of the nodes. Now, that's probably not the way you want to display it. You probably don't want just raw job data on your site. You probably want a view. So go ahead and make one. Our view is not complicated. It's 5 fields, 4 filters. Like I said, we do use view selective filter on both the job titles so that we only see the ones that are available and the state. I will say that after you run your import, this isn't going to work right. Your filters are not going to show up correctly until you update your search index on your site, because those filters are run through search indexing. So make sure you either go run cron to update your search index or do a drush search index, something, and then this will work correctly. Oh yeah, for us, we did, like I said, we linked each of these titles straight off to the USAJobs website, because that's the most expedient way to get people to apply for their job, is to send them to the job application page. You could link that straight to the content item and show more content about the job locally. For that, you probably want to also include in your node mapping and your grabbing of the JSON the actual job description, so that you could display that as well. But we opted not to do that. We opted to just send them straight off to USAJobs. That's it. I'm not going to hold you guys too long. It's not that complicated, like I said. I can give you guys an example of any of these things live if you want to see it. And otherwise, you can ask me questions, and I'll answer them. Yeah, go ahead.
So on one of our older sites, we had a JavaScript application essentially replace it. Well, I noticed, I think it was back in May or June, when USAJobs updated their API.
Yeah.
So is this with reference to the updated API?
Yep. So what he asked was, USAJobs updated their API, and a lot of things broke. And that's true. A lot of things did break. This is why we couldn't just use the public open API. This uses the tokenized search API through USAJobs that you have to go apply for a search token for, or an authorization key. So this is a different way. This allows you to filter by agency code or any number of other things. And USAJobs Developer Portal actually has descriptions for all the different things that you can do on this API request to get only what you need, or to get more of what you need.
Yeah, it's perfect because I've done it with the XML, the same format.
Yeah. Yep.
This way it's going to be a lot easier than trying to debug on JavaScript.
Yeah.
Legacy site.
Doing a custom JavaScript app was one of the ways that we were considering. That wouldn't have been nearly as neat as this, though.
No, like I said, this is way more easier.
Yeah. Any other questions? Yeah. I would just set up multiple feeds importers. Basically, you'd take exactly what you saw from the first feed importer. Your content type wouldn't change, but your second feed importer would just have a different agency code, and they'd all be dumped into content types. The exact same content type. You could set it up to go to different content types, and then, or have an agency selector in your view, and so you'd have to have an agency field as well. Anybody else? These are good questions, by the way. Thank you. Raj, I know you want to ask questions. All right, well, oh, yeah, go ahead.
So I saw you were using, is it
Advanced REST client.
Yeah, do you have like a set of tools that you evaluated as you were doing this that allowed you to kind of expedite some of your debugging and research?
No, I think I saw somebody else using Advanced REST client, and I said that looks pretty cool, so I started using that. I did see Postman was another one you can use, and it looks really cool. And that one's team-oriented too. So if your organization is willing to pay a couple dollars, then like you can save your query, and the rest of the teammates can use it, and you can work on queries together. So that's pretty cool. There's a lot of those tools out there. Advanced REST Client just seems to be the one that works easiest for me. And it was a Chrome extension, so. You can ask me questions about anything about this. Don't be shy. If not, I'm just going to consider I did a good job. And say thank you. All right, everybody. Have a good afternoon. You're elderly.